I didn't sleep that night either. Instead, I pinned the prints to the cabin wall and stared at them, willing them to reveal their secrets. The sixth photograph, the blurry one of the man, kept drawing my attention. There was something familiar about his stance, the set of his shoulders. The next morning, I drove to the neighboring town of Millfield, 30 miles away. If I couldn't get answers in Whispering Pines, perhaps I could find them elsewhere. The Millfield Gazette was a larger paper than the Pines Chronicle, covering news for the entire county. The editor, a gruff man named Howard, was reluctant to help until I mentioned I worked for the New York Times. Professional courtesy opened doors he might have otherwise kept closed. Margaret Holloway, he mused, flipping through an index of names. Doesn't ring a bell, but let me check. He disappeared into the archives and returned 20 minutes later with several clippings. Nothing on your Margaret, but I did find something interesting. There was a Jane Doe found in Watson County in the fall of '53. Body was too decomposed for easy identification. I examined the article. The body had been discovered by hikers in a wooded area about 50 miles from Whispering Pines, 2 weeks after Margaret's supposed departure. The cause of death was listed as blunt force trauma to the head. Was anyone ever identified? I asked. Howard shook his head. Not according to our follow-ups. Case went cold pretty quick. I returned to the cabin with a growing sense of dread. The timeline fit. The cause of death matched what the photograph suggested, but I still had no proof that Jane Doe was Margaret Holloway. That afternoon, I broke my promise to Dr. Levinson and called my contact at the Times, a researcher named Doris, who could find information on anyone if given enough time. I asked her to look into Margaret Holloway, any relatives in Chicago, and the unsolved Jane Doe case from Watson County. Are you working on a story? She asked. Your editor said you were taking time off. Just personal interest, I assured her. Call it occupational habit. While waiting for Doris to call back, I decided to visit Mrs. Winters at the general store. If anyone knew the town gossip, it would be her. The bell above the door jingled as I entered. Mrs. Winters was stocking shelves, her back to me. Be with you in a minute, she called. No rush, I replied, browsing the small selection of canned goods. When she turned, I asked casually, Did you know Margaret Holloway? Mrs. Winters froze for just a moment, then continued her work. Everyone knew Margaret. Small town. I heard she left suddenly. For Chicago. That's right. Her voice was tight. Shame, really. She was well liked. Did she ever mention family there? In Chicago? Mrs. Winters abandoned any pretense of stalking. Why are you asking about Margaret? I decided on honesty. I found some photographs that seemed to show something happening to her. By the lake. The color drained from her face. You shouldn't be digging into old business, Mr. Sullivan. Some things are better left alone. Was she murdered, Mrs. Winters? She glanced toward the door, then lowered her voice. I don't know anything about that, but I do know Sheriff Tanner was sweet on Margaret for years. Even after his wife died, Margaret kept her distance. Said he had a temper. She paused. The night before she supposedly left, I heard them arguing outside the Bluebird Cafe. She was telling him to leave her alone. My blood ran cold. The man in the sixth photograph. Could it have been Tanner? Thank you, I said, heading for the door. Mr. Sullivan? Mrs. Winters called after me. Be careful. The sheriff has friends everywhere. Back at the cabin, I examined the final print again. The man's build matched Tanner's, though I couldn't be certain. I was so focused on the photograph that I almost missed the sound of a car pulling up outside. Through the window, I saw Sheriff Tanner and Deputy Williams approaching the cabin. I quickly gathered the prints and negatives, shoving them into a book on the shelf, and then I opened the door before they could knock. Sheriff, I said, feigning surprise. What brings you out here? Just checking in, Tanner replied, his smile not reaching those pale eyes. Mind if we come in? I stepped aside, watching as they entered. Tanner moved through the cabin like he owned it, examining the books on the shelf, the dishes in the sink. Nice place, he commented. Your uncle kept it up well. I never knew him that well, I said. He died when I was young. Tanner nodded. Parker was a quiet man, kept to himself mostly. Kinda like you. He turned to face me. Mrs. Winters says you've been asking questions about Margaret Holloway. So much for the grocery owner's discretion. Just making conversation. Margaret left town years ago, Mr. Sullivan. She's not coming back, and she's certainly not news. Does that bother you? I asked, unable to help myself. That she left? Something dangerous flashed in Tanner's eyes. What bothers me is outsiders coming into my town and stirring up the past. He moved closer. I looked you up, Sullivan. Big shot photographer. Nervous breakdown after that school shooting. They say you've been seeing things that aren't there. My mouth went dry. Who says that? Your doctor. Very concerned about your mental state. Tanner smiled again. Hallucinations, paranoia, believing you've uncovered crimes that don't exist. Dr. Levinson would never discuss my case. Which meant Tanner was bluffing, or someone was impersonating my doctor. I think I'd like you to leave now, I said. Tanner looked like he might refuse, then shrugged. Sure thing. Just remember what I said about being careful. These old cabins, all kinds of accidents can happen. After they left, I sat shaking on the edge of the bed. Tanner knew I was onto something. He was trying to intimidate me, make me doubt myself. I needed to get the negatives and prints somewhere safe. The phone rang, startling me. It was Doris from the Times. Jack, I found something, she said, her voice excited. Margaret Holloway had no family in Chicago. Her only living relative was a sister in Boston, who reported her missing in October 1953, a month after she supposedly moved. What happened to the report? That's the thing. It was filed with the Boston police, but when they contacted Whispering Pines, Sheriff Tanner told them Margaret had definitely moved to Chicago. He even provided a forwarding address. Let me guess, the address didn't exist. Bingo! The sister tried to pursue it, but without evidence of foul play, there wasn't much the Boston police could do. What about the Jane Doe case? I asked. Here's where it gets interesting. The file was officially closed by the Watson County Sheriff's Department after 3 months. The detective assigned to the case was transferred shortly after. Who was the Watson County Sheriff in 1953? I heard papers shuffling. A man named James Renfield. The name meant nothing to me. Is he still there? No, he retired last year. But Jack, I found a connection. Renfield and your Sheriff Tanner served in the same unit during the war. They were friends. The pieces were falling into place. Tanner kills Margaret in a fit of rage. His war buddy helps cover it up by burying the Jane Doe case. The entire town, either out of fear or misplaced loyalty, maintains the fiction that she moved away. Jack, are you in trouble? Doris asked. Do you need help? No, I lied. Just following a story. Thanks, Doris. I owe you one.